Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is Patrick Hurley, and we're here to talk about his series called Tipsy Talks. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So you're not a stranger to the station. You were just recently on with my colleague and my friend, Pam Ladd.
Yeah, I'm getting my second 15 minutes of fame here.
Now 30 minutes. 30 minutes of fame. But I was really taken by the interview. Pam sent it to me, and I thought, this is great of what you're doing. And in one part, it's because I don't think we have enough younger people involved in, not all your talks are going to be involved history, but part of it will.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to welcome other people into our world, and you're doing something a bit different than everybody else. So tell me about Tipsy Talks.
Yeah, no, I agree. The historical stuff is kind of where I get off, because I'm always impressed by what people got done with the tools that we have now, but they didn't have access to back in the day. And so that's why my presentation will be focused on is kind of like just how productive humans have been, and then what are the legacy impacts of that. But yeah, it's a great chat for a Tipsy Talk, because Tipsy Talks are supposed to be off the cuff, pretty loose. Like I like being entertained. It's supposed to be entertainment, and so it's like a little bit of a hybrid between a comedy skit, a story. It can have emotional. It can pull at your heartstrings, but it really is kind of left to the speaker to take it where they want, to tell a story of whatever topic they want, and it's just kind of an open forum for seeing how the world reacts to these stories.
And what kind of reception have you had to these so far? Because you've held some, right?
I've not. The first one's next Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
I've been to several, and I've presented at two of them, but not in Vermont, not in the Northeast Kingdom. These were all. One was in Wenatchee, Washington. The other one was in Missoula, Montana, and they're pretty well received, mostly because it's a bar,
right.
So that helps. People get a little loosened up. It's also just something different.
Is that thus tipsy?
Yeah, the
talks?
tipsy. Yeah, ideally the speaker has had one or two of their preferred beverages, and it just kind of loosens them up. Maybe allows them to go a little more improv with the story, embellish a little bit more. It also takes the edge off. A lot of people don't love getting in front of a crowd of strangers, and so it's almost like liquid courage to do it. And then it also kind of sets the mood, like, listen, this is not an academic presentation, right, or something that we expect it to be prim and polished.
Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of people who are not used to public speaking, I think they think too hard, and I even think sometimes public speakers think too hard, because I do a lot. Before COVID, I did a lot of public speaking, and what I tell people who are nervous about speaking, don't be nervous. Just
what does that help?
have fun. No, yeah, I tell them just have fun.
Yeah.
And the other time-honored suggestion to people is, and I think it's really true, if you think you're nervous getting up there, everybody else, 90%, 95% of the audience would not do what you are doing.
Oh, yeah.
And just get up there and have fun. But there's so many people that they struggle at the idea of standing in front of a...
Yeah, and that's really what the Tips Talks are all about. And it's supposed to be, loose, informal, in a like non-threatening setting, because what we really hope is for people to come out of the woodwork from the audience and approach us and be like, hey, I think I can do this. I've got an amazing story that I'd love to share. When can I get on the schedule? That's what we want to hear from people as kind of their, how they receive it. They're like, I want to do it. I want to do it.
And I know you've asked me to be one of your guests, and I said I will, but I just, considering things have gone on in my life, I have to take a little reprieve while I regroup. But I could see doing one of your shows, particularly say in Newport in a bar because I've written 2 books on Prohibition.
Yeah.
And the Prohibition stories, they're so colorful that you, like, it's like, for example, just the idea of, it wasn't until recently I finally found the article about my grandfather, you know, when he went to prison for Prohibition violation. I always said, if I ever committed a crime, I wanted to make it memorable because because I've never had a speeding ticket.
Yeah.
So, and I said, my grandfather, who I think that was the only crime he ever committed, and when I read the newspaper article, I said, yes, he did it.
Yeah.
He wasn't a big bad. You know, everybody visions smugglers as these gangsters.
Yeah, with an Uzi or whatever.
Yeah, my grandfather produced moonshine or whatever it would be called at the time, but it was how he sold it in just small quantities. He sold it in baby bottles with nipples on the end. I was so, you know, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, pretty cheeky.
And because I have found every other story about and I am proud to say that my grandfather was the baby bottle bandit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So those kind of stories, I think, are what you're looking for.
Sounds like a story for Jasper's, right?
yeah. And is Jasper's back open or not?
I'm not sure. We haven't, you know, we didn't go right down in with the Newport venues, partially because we wanted to start with only 2 options because, you know, we're going to be flip-flopping, and it's easier for people who aren't familiar with the series or the schedule to only think about where is it tonight? Is it option A or option B?
Right.
And so it's going to be either at the Gap in Westmore or Parker Pie in Glover. But we'd love to see some of these in downtown Newport. We also like the idea of doing kind of like a tour, like a rotation throughout the Northeast Kingdom. But for the first go at it, we wanted to be, you know, realistic and just reach out to a couple places instead of trying to coordinate 7 places.
Right. So you're looking for a mix. Is it a mix of history and humor, or what is it?
No, it doesn't have to be. I mean, mine's going to be a mix of history and humor, but we've got a lot of personal stories. We've got a lot of you know, kind of narrative tales. There's going to be an Edgar Allan Poe evening. There's going to be wildlife encounters. There's going to be personal. You know, we got one who's going to turn it into a little bit of like a rambling comedic performance. Right. So I'm looking forward to that. The only thing we really aren't pushing are like musical performances because there's a lot of opportunity for that around here. Fortunately, there's just not a lot of opportunity for telling a tale.
Right.
You know.
I know. I have a friend who retired from. I better get it right because if he's listening, he'll I believe it was the immigration, not customs,
okay,
and he does a show down in Florida when he goes down in the winter, and you might not think anything about it. It's stand-up comedy without a leg to stand on. Well, you got to understand. My friend Tony O'Connor is a triple amputee.
Wow.
So stand-up comedy without a leg to stand on.
That's great.
And Tony
Tony
lives here in Derby, and his whole thing is, his story is, well, he lost his, he was 16 years old, standing on, he decided to slam his friend upside the head with a snowball in a snowball fight. So he was growing up in New York City. And he stood on top of a railroad car and went to take a swing with a pitch with a snowball, hit an overhead line, and he said it was the most shocking.
Holy crap!
It was the most shocking thing that's ever happened in his life. Lost 3 limbs, but he walks on. He walks on prostheses, and you would never guess he was missing his legs. He can't. He's a champion golfer. He's a champion racquetball player.
Wow.
Everything he says. The only 2 things he struggles at is cutting meat and changing baby diapers.
Yeah.
And went on to have 4 kids. He would actually make a great bar.
Oh, yeah. See, those are the people that we want to draw in, and we tried, I tried a couple different avenues, like Front Porch Forum and just word of mouth, trying to pull some storytellers together, because we've got 12 people signed up for 6 events. And so we've got what we need for the first round, but I'd love kind of like have a queue, have a wait list, to keep the series going. And I don't know if it's going to be, spring, summer, fall continuation, or if we're really going to reserve them for the winter. Because the winter is really, we chose the winter intentionally, is get people out of their house,
I'll if you want, I'll get you Tony's contact, because he's really good. The sad thing is, some of the people who are the greatest storytellers are the ones that, boy, maybe with a little liquid courage they'd get up, but our loggers, foresters.
Yes.
Oh, those people. I'm married into a logging family. Mm-hmm. My brother-in-laws, who would never, ever get up front
and tell a story.
But
what do you think they do outside the truck every morning?
Yeah.
Spend 15 minutes telling a story. You know?
There's so many gifted storytellers, and a lot of times they don't even know it.
Yes.
They just think they're BSing, which is,
it is
kind
to
of
them.
across.
Yeah. And so that's actually where my kind of affinity for telling stories. I mean, maybe I've been a storyteller my whole life, but I really started like recognizing that this is a way to tell a story.
Right.
Is actually working in the woods, working with a logger and a forester. Yeah. And he was a fantastic storyteller. He would never get up in front of 30 people and tell a story. Yeah. But man, like his impersonations, the sounds he can make with his mouth to just like elaborate and accentuate the tale. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. He's a terrible human being, and after working for him for a couple of years, I realized this. But man, can he tell a story? And I like the Gap in particular, and also Parker Pie. Those are 2 very different kind of hubs. Yeah. Westmore does have a very cool logging history, and there are still a lot of foresters and loggers that live around the Willoughby area.
Yeah, the Prontos and
exactly. And Parker Pie's like a different end of the spectrum. There's a lot of creatives who live over there, and so it'd be really neat to kind of see who comes out of the woodwork.
Right. Yeah, because Westmore is more of a hard
scrabble-y.
Yeah, and they also have the long history of tourism that brought people from around the world, famous people. Yeah. But then you have the Glover, which is a mix of a farming community along with the communes that came here. Yeah. And I think if you can get things going, I think it's very interesting. And so is like when you go to like Parker Pie, are people going to be going there for that reason, or are they going to just be sitting there like
the idea is
you're not going to be there as an afterthought. You're going to be the all right.
We're going to be the act, and Tuesdays work out well for us because they often have trivia on Wednesdays. People go to Parker Pie for trivia and happen to get dinner there, and so we're hoping that people go to Parker Pie and the Gap for the event. And the way we pitched it to the venues is like, listen, we're going to draw you in a crowd on a slow night. They're going to spend money. Right. We're going to be the attraction. Can you comp us a couple drinks for the speakers? That's pretty much how it works. And they were thrilled to do it. They're like, yeah, Tuesdays work perfect for that.
And things, you're talking about trivia, like trivia nights. They have ebbs and flows of that.
Oh yeah.
For a while, I don't know who the first one was to have trivia night, but I know the first one I was at was Pie and Pasta. Mm-hmm. But then everybody else started doing trivia night. Yeah. But then comes COVID. That really put because I used to provide some Northeast Kingdom trivia for these groups. I haven't been asked for a long time because there's a lot of neat history that make for great trivia questions.
Yeah, honestly, you could almost tell an interactive tale that is a bit of trivia if you've got a crowd who wants to shout out. That'd be kind of a fun little spin on it.
Yeah.
Tipsy trivia.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to, once I get my feet underneath me again, I will certainly do it. And as I was telling you, if you ever got to, if you ever did one in Newport, I could see me teaming up with Audrey Langlois. She does, she does history in Canada and here. She works at Stanford College, and she has Northeast Kingdom Roots, the Facebook site, and I have a feeling we would play well off of each other, because in some ways we're like two peas in a pod. In other ways, we're like worlds apart. She does Canadian history. I do American history, but she's young and beautiful and smart. I'm this, and
don't be hard on yourself.
And so I think we would play very.
We'll set it up. We'll connect us.
Yeah,
pull it together.
So you ever thought about, or would it play well with having it like on the Newport? I hate to admit this. It's slipping my name. The name of the boat.
Oh, the Northern Star.
Northern Star.
Yeah, I'd love that. Wintertime's definitely not the time for that. No. But it could be like a Tuesday evening cruise, special. That'd be a pretty fun idea.
Yeah. And I know they're.
And it's a boat. It's Tipsy, right?
Right. That's true. That's true. And I know right now they're planning for the upcoming season because they're already they plan down the road in advance. So that might be something you want to explore.
Yeah, actually, Felicia, who is directing a lot of their kind of programming and coordination, she's been working with us on the Winter Saturdays event series at Gateway, which is actually where this Tipsy Talk idea was first. I first proposed it to that group, and we were like, yes, this was last spring or something. We're like, yeah, that's a great winter thing. Let's set it up for the winter.
Right.
So
you're involved, or you developed that group?
I did not develop that group. I've been helping support that group. So that group is the Newport City Downtown Development, and like a young professionals mix. And so we've coordinated the Winter Saturdays. And the Tipsy Talk is kind of, running alongside that.
Are you a Newport resident?
I am.
Why don't you run for mayor?
Why don't I?
Yeah, because
I got a job, a business, a house that I'm renovating,
and because really, even though I live in Derby, I grew up in Newport. Newport, I think it's at a cusp where, and I think it needs more people your age.
It needs young blood.
It needs, because I think this is an exciting time with the mayor stepping down, and if somebody comes in with a vision and the ability to communicate in front of cameras, I think Newport has a lot of promise, and that's how come I would love to see somebody in your age group, not just in your age group. That's not going to fly, but somebody who really knows what they're doing. They have a vision. Yeah. So maybe you'll be drafted after this.
Well, actually, my wife and a couple other younger folks were at a meeting last night with the city manager, just to learn about the council positions and how they function and what kind of the roles and responsibilities are. At the moment, I have no interest in working in public service. Right. Partially because I kind of have a conflict of interest because I work for the nonprofit Watershed Group.
That's true.
And we're always pestering the city to do certain things. And so I don't want to get in between those two. But I have attended quite a few city council meetings, and I try to stay apprised about Newport issues. Right. And the funny thing is, I could throw a rock to Derby, but I pay Newport taxes. So.
And here's a little trivia about the station manager here, Todd Peranto. He is he's the son of a former mayor of Newport.
Oh.
Yeah, I always joke about it. that when he was a kid, he had to have Secret Service protection because his mare was. Actually, we did a little spoof on his. It was during the whole what we now know Russian collusion hoax. Is we did a piece and with Todd and I talking about his father and the connection with Russia, the Russia connection to downtown Newport. It was a bad spoof. He put all these graphics in, and he was talking about his father's connection to Russian money or something that built Newport.
Hey, you got a fable you want to tell Tipsy Talks? We're open.
Yeah. Well, between Todd and I, we can come up with a lot of stories that bear little in truth.
Well, it's a funny thing you say that because, like, I do like the idea of these stories being, true tales, or they're going to be embellished. Mine's going to be embellished, romanticized 100 years ago, so I don't know every detail.
Right.
I'm sure many years are the same, but it's kind of, we're in a sticky situation because this is kind of like oratorical history, right? Like, this is how archives are developed, and great records from decades ago are rediscovered, but at the same time, like, recording the Tipsy Talks is what's going to scare off those amateurs, we'll call them, or those people in the back of the room who might otherwise stand up and be like, hey, I think I could do this. Yeah. And I also think it might smother the freedom that the speakers might have.
And I hate to glorify alcohol, even though I'm a 1 or 2 craft beer a day person, but it's amazing.
Oh yeah,
what alcohol
comes
can do.
Out of you.
It's for example, I have hosted a fair number, I have I don't know what word I'm looking for, celebrations of lives, including for some colorful people, and it's amazing if it goes on for a while, and if they're in places where people are able to consume alcohol, it's amazing that at the beginning nobody wants to speak, and by the end it's like, okay, let me tell you a story.
It's just like weddings, like when we got married, we opened up the floor to, we had 2 friends who both said something about us, but then we opened it up and people had a couple cocktails, and so all of a sudden we get like 6 people, 7 people, 8 people that got up and had something to say, and it was like, this is what we wanted, a little bit of social lubrication or whatever.
And just for people listening, you're not promoting drinking now.
No, and we don't want sloppy. We definitely don't want sloppy. We don't want anybody up there who's incoherent or belligerent.
Right.
It really is supposed to be a casual, social drinking atmosphere.
There's just so many stories that even some, I know some people would love me to just write quaint stories about the mythical Northeast Kingdom. These boring touristy stuff that for some reason tourist people who promote tourism, they don't get it. Tourists are actually pretty normal, and they want to hear the real stories. Yeah. Like, for example, the one that would be stories from the hoochie tents. Now, I don't know if you are familiar.
I'm not. I can make some guesses, but
Barton Fair was one of the last fairs in the United States to have hoochie coochie girl shows,
gosh,
and
really?
These were low class thing. Everybody has stories about those throughout the generations. If they didn't go to them, they knew about it. This was during Barton Fair, and it was over to the right. Everybody, and those are just. I happen to be glad they're gone. I just don't think they're at any place. But when I interview people about Barton Fair, particularly up until the 1980s, or as far back, like especially these old timers who are 90, that's one of the first things. Oh yeah, he said the hoochie shows. Wow. We'd always, they'd say, well yeah, we always had to go looking for Dad because Dad had snuck off, and so there's so many stories that are when you think about history, it's kind of like people think of stuffy, boring crap.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fascinating pieces of history that are actually quite colorful.
Yeah, and honestly, to me, like, geopolitical history is not interesting, but like small regional in history is like, wow.
Yeah, it is. And let's be real, with parts of history, like what I do is I record oral history. And I know with oral history, some things are embellished, some things are actually toned way back. That's why, but one thing I do is, a lot of times with my articles on oral history, I actually include newspaper articles that coincide with what the person is saying. So,
kind of support it a little bit.
So what are your plans for the speakers coming up?
Okay, so next Tuesday the 17th, we're at the Gap.
So people, all right. First of all, when people are watching this, or listening to this, that would actually be this Tuesday. What's the date of the day?
Sure, it's the 17th.
Right.
Tuesday, January 17th, 7 p.m. at the Gap is our first event. Myself and Maggie Patton will be sharing some tales. And then, so each speaker will talk for like 30, 45 minutes. There'll be a few minute break, and then we're going to get the second person up for 30, 45 minutes. So we're trying to keep it about 90-minute, evening. The speaker's going to get there a little early, have a cocktail or two on the house, get, nice tuned up, and then start, kicking it off sometime after 7. So I would get there early. But then we have, every 2 weeks, we're going to go to the flip-flop from either the Gap to Parker Pie and back and forth. So we have all Tuesdays, the 17th of January, the 31st of January, the 15th, which is a Wednesday of February, because I don't want to take up people's Valentines Tuesdays. And then 28th of Feb, the 14th of March, and 28th of March. We've got 2 speakers every night for the series. We actually have one open slot at the end on March 28th that we're trying to fill, either from a recommendation or from someone who gets out of the audience and says, "Hey, where can I sign up?"
Right. I think I'm hoping you'll do pretty good, because I did a similar thing for a few years, but mine was stationary at the Goodrich, so it was a different thing. It wasn't, you didn't sit there and have a cocktail.
Yeah.
But sometimes I would get 6 people. Other times I'd get 60 people, depending on the topic of this person speaking. And so, I heard
that's why we chose 2, because the themes are not paired up.
Right.
Each topic for any given night is going to be potentially wildly different from the first topic.
Oh, so you and the other one, you're not doing it together.
No, it's my talk break, then her talk. She's telling 3 short stories. I'm telling one drawn-out historical narrative kind of thing. And then the next week we have, like wildlife encounters and a kind of a comedy skit of sorts. Right. So,
can people who are people who are going to are people there? Are they going to be able to be interactive?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like the comedy one, I think he's going to start poking fun at the audience a little bit. Yeah. Now, and that's the nice thing about an informal talk is, like, if someone's really rolling from something, you can kind of lean into it more. Right. You can see who's in front of you. We're not on a big stage and you're just blinded by lights or anything. It's going to be a lot. The idea is that it's interactive. Like, I want people to ask me questions in the middle of it.
Yeah,
because then I can go on a tangent.
Yeah, because that's the way I do my thing is, and usually I'll find somebody that I really know, and that I know can take it. I'll poke some good-natured fun at them if the topic.
Oh yeah, if you got a plant in the audience, by all means leverage that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't usually have a plant. What I do is I actually look around and I'll say, okay, who can go with the flow?
Yeah, who can go toe to toe?
Yeah, and because I really, look forward to doing it at some point, and I'm just hoping too that the ordinary, amazing, gifted storytellers will actually take part. there's as I said, I have an affinity towards people who work with their hands, especially in the woods. I often say that I think they have too much time on their hands to think when they're in the woods alone, and they come up with these stories. Like I know we were talking about the Clyde River before the show, and one of the icons of the watershed movement here in the fishery and such was a man named Jersey Drown. Jersey was a forester. His son Charlie is a forester, and Jersey could make the most mundane things. He just found humor in everything, including while he was marking trees with a yellow raincoat on a rainy day in Jay, and he got shot right in the butt through both cheeks by a person who mistook him for a bear. And that's a true story. And he's
laughing while he's telling it.
Yeah, and wow. he says, yep, went right through both. Man. But no, that was a true story. But he would tell that story and just like...
Well, I mean, when you're in the woods, whether you're running a chainsaw and you're just listening to the white noise of the motor, or if you're just, picking up sticks, dragging logs, like there's a lot of time to think. And it's often something where you need to entertain yourself. Right. So you're crafting these in your head while you're doing it. Yep. So I'm no stranger to that, and that's exactly who I want to hear from.
Right.
Those people.
All right. Well, we're about ready to wrap up. What more would you like to tell the listeners?
You can find our information on Facebook. I think NEK TV is going to share quite a bit of the event series, and then we'd love to see it. We need to support our local community, learn from our neighbors and strangers.
Right.
It's nice to hear from somebody you don't know and then run into them in the grocery store.
Right.
And so this is an opportunity to just get out and meet some friends, family members, and strangers in the Northeast Kingdom.
I know I'm going to have some names for you, and I can think of one right offhand. I'll talk to you after the
excellent
after the recording is done.
Yeah.
All right. So is that it?
I guess so.
All right. Hey, thank you for coming on, and thank you for joining our little community of people who love history, and you're doing it your own way.
We'll see if you like it. Come check it out.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.